This is Billy Sloan on BBC Radio Scotland, and it's a great pleasure to welcome back to the programme Shirley Manson of Garbage. How are you and where are you?
I am in Edinburgh, Scotland, and I wish we were doing this face to face. I had no idea that I was actually talking to you this morning, and I'm delighted to hear your voice because it's been a long time since you and I have spoken.
Shirley, the brand new album is called Let All That We Imagine Be the Light. It's the 8th record in the 32-year career of Garbage. Where did it start? What was the catalyst for this collection of songs?
You know, in some ways, this is a companion piece to the last record, No Gods, No Masters. It's sort of the fallout, if you will, from that the sort of period of our lives where we made No Gods, No Masters, which was quite a furious record, I suppose. It's quite outspoken, quite political, quite rageful in a way. And this is a companion piece to that, where we are now 5 years on from that record. The world is in exactly the place that I feared it would be when we released No Gods, No Masters. And I realised that there was no use and no place now for my outrage. It was too late. And we were where we were. And how was I going to move forward in my own life, both as a regular human being and also as a musician? And that's basically where I sprung from on this record. We had a deal with BMG Records. They wanted their second record from us. And so we had that contract to fulfill. So we made the record, and this is the record that emerged from all that.
You have described the album as being about what it means to be alive and facing your imminent destruction. You say it's a tender, thrilling record about the fragility of life. We're living, as you mentioned earlier there, in very turbulent times. So in a lyrical sense, was that sparking off loads of song ideas for you?
Well, yeah, I haven't been very well, sort of mechanically broken. And I really had to learn to be patient with myself. And I think a lot of that mindset of recovering my own health is in the record in a way. Like I really had to imbue the record with a lot of love. I had to learn actually to apply some self-love, which I have never done in my life before. You know, I'm 58 years old. I have been a self-loather my whole life. But when I found myself in a lot of pain, and also I couldn't walk. I had to learn to walk again. I had to really be kind to myself, and I had to get quieter, and I had to get slower, and I had to get patient. And the world felt frightening, and the only thing I had any control of was how much love I was going to employ in the making of this record, in the communication of my lyrics, and then healing my own body.
Like any band who've had a degree of longevity, you know, the Garbage have had their ups and downs. You know, you took a kind of time out from the band, each of you, on a couple of occasions. And you mentioned your health there. You had surgery in your vocal cords away back in 2003. And in 2016, we should explain that you fell off the stage and smashed your hip joint. And then in 2024, your other hip collapsed and you needed surgery on that too. There's a great line where you say you joked of the indignity of having to zoom around in a sweatsuit with a walker, which of course is like a Zimmer. And you say that, you know, you can hear some of my suffering on this album because you went through a period of kind of writer's block. You say you had a terrible brain fog. How did you overcome that if you were in such poor health?
Well, I wasn't in poor health. I was mechanically broken. There's a difference.
Yeah.
And so I still had robust health. I just couldn't walk. And, there is something absolutely humiliating, at 50, I think I was 56 when I had the first surgery, shuffling around with a Zimmer frame, right? You feel ancient and you feel over. And I felt scared and I felt really vulnerable. And, I've enjoyed a very robust, healthy life. So to be somewhat crippled and to be fragile or to face my fragility was really brand new. It was wild. And luckily for me, I am, as you know, a very disobedient, robust character, and I was also excited because I have this opportunity to make this record with my amazing band. And so I had a lot of motivation to get well. But it was humiliating. And, I've learned a lot through the rehab process. I've really realised I had a lot of twisted thinking going on. I think I felt shame when I broke. You know, we played Wembley Arena last year, and it was the biggest show of our recent career, you know, since the 90s, essentially. We hadn't never played such a big gig in such a long time. I was so excited about it. The very next again day, I had to get wheeled through Heathrow Airport on the way home in a wheelchair. And that was a sobering, you know, to be headlining Wembley Arena and then the next again day be shuffled through Heathrow in a wheelchair was, whew, that was some journey, that.
But you got there in the end, and I'm glad that you're talking to us now, lying in your bed in Edinburgh, so I'm glad you've fully recovered. We're going to play some tracks from the album, and if nothing else, this is one of my favourites, and it's got one of the song titles of the record. So this is Garbage, and a brand new song called Get Out of My Face, a.k.a. Bad Kitty. This is Billy Sloan on BBC Radio Scotland. You join me in conversation with my special guest Shirley Manson. We're talking about the brand new Garbage album, which is a great record called Let All That We Imagine Be the Light, and it's the band's 8th studio release. And you described, Shirley, how, you know, a lot of the groundwork for the record was kind of almost done remotely. You said that the band would send you kind of instrumentals with zany song titles, and the first single from the record is a great song that we've been playing in the programme called There's No Future in Optimism, which I believe was a chant remark by one of the band members. And everywhere you look, you know, there's conflict and turmoil. The lyrics describe the world where the night is dark and the air is thick with helicopters and sirens are screaming. But you describe the song as an anthemic call to arms. So do you believe that there is a future in optimism?
Well, the title was the subject line in an email that the band sent me during my recovery. I was at home, they were working remotely at Butch's studio, and they sent me this piece of music, and the title was There's No Future in Optimism. And my heart kind of sank because it was the polar opposite of what I believe, and it was the polar opposite of the kind of angle I wanted to take on our new record. But then I realised, amazing title, which I'm going to steal. So I stole it and then I wrote around it. But that title became the springboard of sort of for me, for the whole record. All the lyrics on the new record are in answer to that statement. It's in opposition to that statement because I believe that being hopeful, being positive, not getting despondent, not feeling apathetic, not feeling despair is disobedience, resistance. I think the systems that are in place, the people in power, they want us to feel helpless. They want us to feel despondent. And I refuse to buckle under, because the reason they want us to feel that way is because we're more malleable that way. They can push us around and get us to accept things if we feel hopeless. So I feel like it's really important right now in particular, because of the forces of the world are so insane to me. It's full of destruction and violence and terror and hate and othering. I refuse to accept their imaginings of our future. I think the future can actually be amazing, but it's going to require some rethinking and redesign.
Let's hear the song now then. This is the first single from the brand new album from Garbage. It's a great new song called There's No Future in Optimism.
If you're ready for love, 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 if you're ready for
Billy Sloan on BBC Radio Scotland. You join me with my special guest Shirley Manson of Garbage. And Shirley, you've been making music all your adult life, and of course, as we know in this part of the world, you kind of learned your craft and learned your chops with, Goodbye, Mr. Mackenzie and Angelfish. Now, I remember way back when you joined Garbage, you told me that you flew over to Madison, Wisconsin to join the rest of the band, and they just assumed that you wrote songs, so you were kind of thrown in at the deep end. Is it fair to say that Shirley Manson as an artist was full of self-doubt, but with 8 albums under your belt, how would you describe her now?
Yeah, I'm not full of the same self doubt that I suffered from at the beginning of our career, for sure. I mean, I've definitely become a better writer, better producer, better artist, better singer, better lyricist. And I'm very grateful and amazed that I've come this far. I don't think anybody bet on me to come and, enjoy a 30-year career with her third band. One of the reasons that I have endured is because of the incredible education I received whilst playing keyboards and singing backing vocals in Goodbye, Mr. Mackenzie. I learnt so much, from Martin and John and Kelly and Finn and Rona. Like, they taught me so much, almost everything I needed to know stepping up into the world as a lead singer of a band that were getting a lot of attention.
And I mean, I read a great quote that you said that, when your mum sadly passed away in 2008, you say, "I never believed I was an artist until she died. I felt that it was her last gift to me." What did you mean by that, Shirley? What did you mean?
Well, I think when my mum died, it was right in the middle of a hiatus that Garbage had taken, because we realised that no matter what we did, we were out of step with the mainstream, and everybody was just uninterested really in pretty much anything we had to offer, musically or otherwise. And we realised we were sort of beating our heads bloody. We were on tour and the tickets weren't selling and nobody wanted to play our records on the radio anymore. And we realised that we were sort of in peril. So we took some time off. And in the time off that we took from each other, from the band, my mother got diagnosed with Pick's disease, which is a very aggressive form of dementia. And she died within 18 months. So I was essentially unemployed. I didn't have anything to do at that time. And I was lost and afraid and despondent. And then when my mum died, I was like, you know what? I need to get my shit together, because my mum would be so disappointed in me if I just accepted that this was the end of my career as a musician. She would be so angry. And so I just started to think differently, I suppose, about where I was in my career, about my age, about my gender, about my songwriting abilities, about the worth of my band. And I just decided to reject all that and just move forward. And the band slowly got back together again, and we started writing, and we stopped worrying about what other people thought about us, whether the record business were going to embrace us. We were just like, you know what? We love to make music. We love to play. There is nothing stopping us from being artists. We don't have to be famous. We don't have to be the success story that we once were. We can just do our own thing and be liberated from all that. And that's exactly what we did. And step by step, we've sort of patched together our career again, albeit in a very different form, but it's still a very vigorous career. And as I said, we played Wembley Arena last year and we were all shocked. When our promoter said, "Hey, we're thinking of putting you in Wembley Arena for your London show this time around. How do you feel about that?" And we were like, "Are you having a laugh?" We thought he was joking. Or there'd been a mistake made and maybe there was a little venue off to the side. You know how sometimes you get big venues and they have baby venues?
Yeah.
We thought maybe we were going to be playing a baby venue next to Wembley Arena, and we were genuinely shocked. And I think that's when we really realised, wow, we really did what we set out to do here.
I'm playing tracks, some of my favourite tracks from the record, which I've been listening to for the past couple of weeks. And another track that was written during your recovery from hip surgery is The Day I Met God. Now, I don't want to read too much into the lyrics, but how literal are they when you say things like, "I found God in Tramadol," which of course is an opioid pain medication, and I have to confess, I thought I'd lost my mind, so there I was face to face with God. If we could take that as read.
Yeah, you take that. That is a literal description of basically what came upon me one day. I was listening to, again, one of the pieces of music the band had sent me, and it was very, very cinematic. And I was doing my rehab. I was on the treadmill. And just this idea came upon me, and I really loved the chords in particular and the chorus, and I really wanted to do those chords justice. And so I wanted a really beautiful chorus. And I sort of struck upon this idea, and I went to my bedroom and sat down and recorded it. And what's on the record is essentially the writing demo. I mean, I dropped in some backing vocals, but what you hear is me writing that. That was just how it all came out. And in the writing of it, I was suddenly like, oh my God, like I have stumbled upon a truth here. Because I think as a child who rejected organized religion at a very early age, and I've never been invested in organized religion full stop, I have always struggled to sort of find a way of believing, some form of faith, something to make sense of why we're here and, where we're going kind of thing. And when I wrote the line, something about, God, my mind's gone blank, but it's something to do with the day I met God. I realized that God was everything and everyone I ever loved and everything I ever wanted. And I'm like, I think this is God for me. That is my faith. And then, of course, the joke's on me because later on in the song, you realize I'm high on tramadol. And did I meet God? Maybe, maybe not. But somewhere in that whole madness, I did find a thread of truth that felt really magical.
Well, I'm sure God would have remembered meeting Shirley Manson. You can bet your bottom dollar about that. Let's hear the song now from the brand new album from Garbage. This is Shirley Manson and lead vocals and The Day I Met God.
And so there I was, face to face with God. It was everyone I'd ever loved, and I didn't say a word. Let's call it what it was. It was everything I'd ever wanted. Tramadol, tramadol. I found God in tramadol, tramadol, tramadol. I found God in tramadol, tramadol, tramadol. I found God in tramadol, tramadol, tramadol. I found God in tramadol. My life fell apart the day that I met God.
Garbage from the brand new album called Let All That We Imagine Be the Light. You join me in conversation with my special guest, Shirley Manson. And you mentioned earlier, Shirley, that you're 58 years of age. I'm going to remind you that you're going to be 59 on the 26th of August. I think the age is just a number. You're still the youngest member of Garbage. Now, when you look back at the incredible achievements that, the band have chalked up over the years, 17 million albums, Grammy nominations, a Bond theme for The World Is Not Enough. In 1999, you performed in the same year at the opening of the Scottish Parliament. You say that you don't know how long Garbage has left because the older I get, the more I enjoy life. What are you most proud of? Of all those achievements, what are you most proud of?
Getting old, I guess.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, when you say age is just a number, I don't know if I agree with that.
Why?
Well, because of course age is real, right? I mean, to deny it is, I think, missing out on a plethora of beautiful gifts that it gives you. Like, I have never felt more liberated than I do now. I've never felt happier than I do now. I've never been a better artist than I am right now. All these things that they don't tell you when you're young, they make you fear being older. And I think they do it for a reason, because you become less malleable as you get older. It's not so easy to push an older person around. You become really much more powerful in yourself, I think, if you allow yourself to fall into its arms and understand really that it's a great privilege to grow up. It's a great privilege to know more than you once did. It's a great privilege to have a different kind of perspective than maybe you did when you're younger. So I'm proud that I am the age I am. I have no desire at all to go back to the 90s. I have no desire to be young. I have no desire to be the beautiful little slip of a thing I once was. I am much less self conscious. And as I said earlier, I feel free. And I think that's really a wonderful place to be, you know?
You are inspired by strong women, people like Susie Sue and Chrissy Hinder, the Pretenders, and Debbie Harry of Blondie. You know, they were making records as you were kind of making your own records and kind of growing up in a musical sense. You're said to be liberated, mouthy, opinionated, political, and also often beautiful and powerful, which could also describe each of the three people that I mentioned. But recently, a section of the press have been kind of describing Garbage as being visually unrecognisable and commenting on your look and your changing image. You know, they said incredibly unflattering things at some periods of time, and you said, I wasn't the right personality to deal with that. I found it repulsive. I mean, does it hurt, or does the Shirley Manson, who's going to be 59 in August, who suffered from low self-esteem, does she even care anymore? Did she give a damn?
I do give a damn only in that I know that kind of rhetoric aimed at women is really destructive and hurtful towards, like, for young women still. If you see that kind of rhetoric out there in the media, you, I think, even if you're really young, you absorb it and you start to think, oh, they're going to attack me when I get older. And they start to fear age, you know? Whereas when I encounter ageism now, I feel pity for the people that are projecting it on me, because I realize that people who think that way, who think that somehow getting older is something to be ashamed of, they themselves have swallowed this messaging from a still predominantly patriarchal, old white male system that wants women to feel that they have no agency past the age of 25. And so it still bothers me when I see it, because I think it's destructive to the fabric of our society. I don't think it's good for men either. You know, men are starting to get criticised for the way they look now, and I don't think that's a nice development. And so, yeah, in terms of it being aimed at me, I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less.
But I mean, you look at some of the, you know, the current female artists who are out there doing great things, people like Taylor Swift and Chapel Roan, and you're a big admirer of both of them. You've been very kind of vocal and upfront about that. What is it you like about them? Because they're doing a kind of similar thing, but also a very different thing to what you're doing.
Well, they're much more pop orientated than I have ever been. You know, I always gravitate to more of the alternative artists. But I will say this: watching Taylor Swift make the music industry her bitch has been one of the most glorious things I think I've ever witnessed in my time in a very difficult, very cruel, very punitive industry. And she really has run circles around them all. And she has, you know, redefined certain aspects of the record industry. And I don't know if she ever gets credit for that. I think she's a very interesting, super intellectual, bordering on. I would call her a genius. I think she's a genius.
I went to see her last summer at Murrayfield Stadium, which is not far from where you're talking to me at the moment. And I took my granddaughters who knew every word of every song, and they had their little kind of wristband bracelets and that kind of thing. And I did not know what to expect. And I have to say, I was completely and utterly blown away. I thought she was fantastic.
Yeah, Chrissy Hines said the same thing. She actually posted about it. I mean, I find it interesting to watch the vitriol that Taylor Swift has encountered in her career, because look, she's writing about the experience of a woman, you know, from the age of 13, I believe she'd started recording. We heard, you know, the Tim McGrath song, you know, when she was maybe 15, 14, 15, I don't know. But she's grown up in the public eye. She talks about everything that has happened to her in her life very candidly. And it's not something really we've seen or heard, should I say, in, once again, this patriarchal system that I'm talking about, we haven't seen a woman dominate like that ever before. I mean, Madonna did, but Madonna wasn't doing all her own writing necessarily. I know she did co-write, but you know,
Yeah.
Taylor's writing, pretty much writing every word that comes out of her mouth. And I think people sneer at it because she's breaking a lot of those old patriarchal rules. She doesn't get the respect that perhaps a male contemporary would, because it's dismissed as, oh, that's teenage stuff. That's silly teenage girl stuff. Therefore, it's not important. And then you see the power of all those songs. Like you say, your granddaughter, I'm sure your daughter, you know, your sister, your auntie, your mother, your granny, they're all loving Taylor Swift. She's touching on something in a very specific and deep way that we've never seen before. And it's powerful and it's amazing. It's the glorification of the feminine, you know, whilst also being an incredible businesswoman.
We have known each other for very many years, but when I knew I was going to be talking to you today, I kind of course, was reading up on you. And I found a great little nugget which said that your first public performance was in 1970 when you were aged 4 and you sang that fantastic song, Never Smile at a Crocodile, in your local church hall. Could that innocent little girl up on that stage singing just for the sheer pleasure of it, could she have envisaged what lay ahead for Shirley Manson?
No, I never, never, never. And I don't think anybody around me ever did either. I mean, I have been the biggest surprise to myself and to those who know me and love me. You know, I don't think anybody imagined this would be my life. I mean, I still can't believe it, like to be releasing an 8th record on a major label, you know, nearly 60 years old, you know, to meet some of my idols who treat me as a peer. That's mental. It's absolutely mental, and the insanity of it never is lost on me. You know, I'm still sweating like I'm 15 years old, working in a Selfridge meeting, you know, or walking past Joe Strummer in the street and blushing, and my mum going, "Why are you blushing?" As we're passing Joe Strummer, who's coming with the Clash to play Edinburgh, you know, at Coasters. So I'm still that person, but I get to hobnob with some unbelievably amazing artists who sort of look at me as a, I don't know, as a peer. It's weird.
I think you should go back into the recording studio and do a version of Never Smile at a Crocodile as the next Garbage single. I think that would be absolutely tremendous. We're going to bow out now with one of the band's all-time classics, so let's go to 1995 to your self-titled debut album. Only Happy When It Rains. The lyric says, pour your misery down on me. But it's an incredibly uplifting song which has taken a life of its own. You must be very affectionate towards that particular track.
You know, I have a love-hate relationship with that song because, of course, I love it. It literally changed my life. And it is very, you know, has such a Scottish thrust to it. But also, you know, I feel like as a band, it's frustrating as an artist to have a 30-year career and have everyone only talk about that first record, you know? And so I have a love-hate relationship with it. Sometimes I love it and I'm delighted to hear it played on Scottish radio. And then other times I just feel so removed from it because I'm not that girl anymore. You know, I've really grown up. I've seen so much. I've lost so much that I'm not the girl I once was. So it's getting harder and harder for me to relate to that song. You know, if I'm really honest, which of course, as you know me, you know I always am.
Well, let's hear it now. It is a fantastic song, so let's play out with it. I'd like to congratulate you on the brand new album. Once again, it's called Let All That We Imagine Be the Light. Shirley, thank you very much indeed for joining us in the programme. We'll see you soon, I hope. And this is Garbage, and Only Happy When It Rains.
I'm only happy when it rains.